Hey guys, Ashley here. Today I'm bringing you a phenomenal guest, Erwan Rambourg. He is a consumer analyst and he is the author of not one, but two phenomenal books. One is called Bling Dynasty, and some of you might have read it. Now his new book, which is called Future of Luxe, is out. Erwan, phenomenal to have you on the show.
Great to see you again, Ashley. I'm actually fortunate to see you, even though you're in Hong Kong and I'm in New York. So, there are some silver linings to this crisis, I guess.
Absolutely. You have been working in the China consumer and retail space for quite a while. And obviously this year is very special, right? We are all overwhelmed with COVID-19 and there's a lot of changes coming. Tell me a little bit, why have you decided to write this book about luxury right now in 2020 as COVID was hitting?
So I have to say, I wrote the first book 6 years ago, which was specifically on Chinese luxury consumption at a time of crisis. This was post the initial Xi Jinping speeches around, curbing corruption, going after the tigers and flies, if you remember that approach. Yeah. And at the time, you had a lot of people who were thinking, oh, this is the end of Chinese luxury consumption as we know it, and the future will be about the Indonesian, the Indian, the Nigerian, the Brazilian consumer. And the first book was there to say, no, that's wrong. The future is still about Chinese. Here, we're in a time of crisis, again, obviously a much broader crisis, a much more entrenched crisis with global ramifications. And again, it's a bit of a book that's full of hope. I am very optimistic about the future. I started to write this book thinking, the industry's done pretty well. There's a bit of complacency. COVID-19 had not hit yet. And I was fortunate enough to have finished the first draft when COVID hit China and was starting to migrate to other countries. And I took the time to take into account what COVID actually implied. And surprisingly enough, I didn't add chapters, I didn't subtract chapters. I think a lot of the implications of the COVID-19 pandemic is that many trends which were necessary, which were initiated, just got a boost in terms of speed. And I think, again, you're looking at a sector that had a bit of complacency. They've done well. You've seen a lot of good growth, high margins, great cash generation. Maybe some brands resting on their laurels. And again, I'm an eternal optimist because I used to work in the luxury industry. And so that's the way people think. It's sort of a glass half full approach to life. And I think there are many benefits that we will see from this crisis in terms of the luxury sector reinventing itself. And so, it's a broader topic than the first book. It's not just about Chinese luxury consumption. It's really about the next 10 years for this sector post-COVID.
That's perfect. And do you feel that luxury market in general needs to be redefined, reinvented?
Yeah. So I mean, again, you've had a few trends where we are seeing now a steep acceleration. So, for example, a year and a half before COVID hit, you already had a sort of repatriation of growth in the local market. You moved from a very globalized world where you were super dependent on travel retail to gradually learning more about who you were selling to in local markets. When I worked in this industry in marketing functions 15, 16 years ago, I didn't have a clue who I was selling to. I didn't need to know. And the reason for that is it was essentially supply driven. I needed to be able to produce enough. And then the market got more competitive and you had new entrants and the growth became tougher to go about. And now you're in a position where you actually have to have a keen interest in getting to know her. Who is she? What makes her tick? And so the repatriation of growth, just factually, because the world is closed and no one can travel anywhere, everyone is consuming locally. And so you're forced to consider that tourism flows eventually should be considered as the cherry on the cake. It's not a given. If you're Hong Kong, if you're Europe, if tourists come back, fine. But if they don't, you have to deal with it, and you have to learn how the locals function. So repatriation of growth, localization, if you will, of consumption started pre-COVID, got accelerated with COVID, but also digitalization. I mean, there's this ongoing joke around who took care of your digital revolution? Was it your CTO? Was it your CEO? And everyone's like, neither. It was COVID.
Yeah.
COVID forced me to basically get my act together. And stop postponing the tough choices that were ahead of me. And so both in terms of, the storytelling online, in terms of how you want to sell online. Do you want to sell online? And if so, who, with, and how? And then I would say, so repatriation is one thing, digitalization is another. Better retail. Why would I actually go to a store if I consider that, at least in the short term, I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable? Is it safe? Do I want to spend time? It better be worth it. And if you're in this mood of it better be worth it, give me something that is exciting. Give me some surprise. Give me some delight. Don't give me a copy and paste of a store that I've seen 50 times across the globe. The cookie cutter approach to retail is beyond boring. And again, COVID is an accelerator. If I am brave enough to go to a store, it better be worth it. It better be worth my time, or theoretically the risk that I'm taking. And then the last acceleration, I would say, is consolidation, i.e. M&A and scale in the space. I am still convinced that the future, of luxury is driven by female consumers, driven by youth, but more importantly, driven by Asian consumers, and notably Chinese. And so what it tells you is there's still a lot of recruitment. Many brands today will generate the bulk of their growth with first-time purchasers. And if you're a first-time purchaser, if you're in the market of my first handbag, it has to be a handbag brand that is known. It has to be one of the big three. If it's not Vuitton, it might be Chanel. If it's not Chanel, it might be Gucci. If you're wealthier, it might be Hermes. If you're edgier, it might be Dior or Prada. You're not going to really look, hard and deep beyond those 5 or 6 names if you're a first-time purchaser. And so scale is a phenomenal advantage because it gives you a voice. And again, in a very crowded space, you want to dominate the headlines, you want to dominate the conversations, the blogs, the forums. You want to dominate storytelling, not storytelling between the brand and the consumer, but storytelling amongst consumers. What is my girlfriend talking about these days? What was her first branded handbag purchase and why? And so it's, might sound a bit sad to say for the small independent guys, but you've just exited a decade of M&A and consolidation. And I think, post-COVID, let's see the dust settle. I mean, it has settled in China, but elsewhere, we're still working through this. Again, I'm New York based. It doesn't feel like it's over. But once the dust settles and once hopefully you get a proper rebound at some stage next year, then I think M&A will start again and consolidation will start again. It's small independent brands are not for sellers. No one's going bust, in my view. Maybe retailers are going bust, but if you look at brands, very few are at risk of disappearing in terms of financial metrics, but in terms of relevance, they might need some backing. They might need to team up. They might need to merge. They might need to sell if they want their brand name to be in bright light still in 30, 50 years, whatever the sort of, family driven outlook is, whatever the time frame they have in mind.
That is very interesting. Right now, a few times you've mentioned a she consumer, that women-powered luxury consumption in Asia is going to only grow and continue. Can you tell us about her and him as well? Because for the longest time, it was driven by male consumers, right? So who are they right now in 2020, he and she?
Yes, I think you're right. I think, the first chapter of the book is called The Future is Female. And I got some pushback from a former colleague of mine who I worked with at Dior, who was saying, well, the past was female and the present is female too. What do you mean? It's simply this idea that what Shinzo Abe called Womenomics in Japan. So basically an economic reality that women will count a lot more in many countries' economy, whether it's linked to a reduction in the salary gap between men and women, whether it's linked to a greater participation rate to employment, whether it's linked to the fact that you're getting married later, you're getting kids later, if you're getting any kids at all. And so you can spend on yourself instead of spending on a household. And linked to that, you're having a big shift from gifting, i.e., typically in jewelry, the market 20 years ago was around, women waiting for that guy to wake up and, get me a 2-carat diamond, to actually, I don't need that guy. I am buying for myself. It's self-purchasing, it's impulse purchasing, it's me taking over. So female-driven sectors will be massively supported, whether it's, again, jewelry, whether it's cosmetics, whether it's handbags and accessories. But I think the more important reality is that even subsectors which you thought were not just female driven, and I take the example on purpose of spirits in the book, because spirits comes across as quite a macho sector, in terms of communication, in terms of product development, in terms of branding. But the reality is, if you consider 75 to 80% of household purchases, who influences those purchases, it is still women, and and actually, if you do a bit of research, you'll find that women invented the cocktail and the whole cocktail culture. So, women are everywhere, and I think both in terms of economics, but also in terms of a different place in society. You've had, again, a silver lining probably with the Me Too crisis in the US. You've had the reality, talking about COVID. Again, many articles on the fact that the countries who have dealt with this crisis the better, surprise, surprise, are run by women, female politicians. So I think it's a combination of wealth, clearly a lot more spending coming, but also a place in society, which is the place that women should have had all along, right? So I do think there's a sort of great compounding growth nature with the female consumer. Now, men, and again, I got pushback with people saying, oh, well, you should speak in terms of dual genders. Genders don't mean anything anymore. Okay, fine. But there are products, or there are brands, whether it's in skincare or whether it's in fashion, that can cater to both with the same products. There's no issue about this. And you will have some localized phenomenons. If you look at Korea, if you look at Japan, in the watch space, for example, men are actually relevant and they're spending a lot. If you're looking at skincare targeted to either dual gender or men, you're getting quite a bit of traction, again, from a pretty low level. But in essence, I think if you have to look at the next 10 years and if you have to look at the next wave of spending, I would bet on women first.
Absolutely, and this is beautiful. And actually, there's a couple of examples to also, support your point. Just very recently, China is all about women, especially women above 30 and 40 as well. And we have TV shows, we have a lot of social kind of discussions online against body shaming, right? Against the fact that a woman is called leftover after 26 if she is not married. Recently, gamers, and in China, 50% of gamers are actually women, right? They said totally inappropriate to have all these male characters and 10% or 15% of characters in the games being women. Like, come on, we have 50% of your, consumer base. And actually, talking about jewelry, you just now said that women were sitting there and waiting for that big 2-carat ring. Amazingly awesome, because there is a Chinese local brand that is whose actually selling point is only a man can purchase a ring there only once. So a true love basically happens once in a lifetime, and a man can only get one ring for that one woman. And in fact, when you go to the shop or purchase online, you need to submit your 身份证, your ID card, to prove that this is your first purchase. So basically, when a girl receives it, she's like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is basically true love and it's forever. So recently, a lady was turned away from the shop. She was prohibited to buy because she was purchasing for herself. Shitstorm happened on social media because of that. And essentially the sales assistant was saying, well, if you are in some sort of non-heterosexual relationship, you can still buy for a partner. But if you're buying for yourself, that's not okay. And that is not okay anymore. So the guys are in trouble. They're facing a huge PR crisis because, again, women are, they are in a position where they say, you know what? I'm buying for myself, and why not? Even if I can only purchase one ring from you guys, but I manifest this love myself for myself. Very interesting.
I think interestingly, Mao had this quote, which is "Women hold up half the sky." I think it's a lot more entrenched actually in the Chinese society than in other societies, that women should be considered as completely equals, and that is in the frame of mind, that is in the philosophy, a lot more than in the West, actually.
Absolutely, I agree with that. And I come from the Soviet background. I was born in the last years of Soviet Union. I actually did a TED talk about it, talking about how
I
when people think
remember.
about, yeah, people think about communism, but this women empowerment angle very rarely comes through. Well, in fact, the two countries, both, mainland China and Soviet Russia, they had to empower women, not only because of ideology, but also practical necessity after the, famines, wars, and
Mhm.
whatever else that happened 70 years ago. And the legacy is here. We can see powerful women. China, by the way, is by far the most successful country when it comes to self-made women billionaires. More than 70% of global
Mhm.
total is that. Now, what about COVID-19? Has COVID-19 really changed the demand, the desire to purchase luxury? So essentially, is it, is it still on, or are we in need to wait to next year?
It's actually quite surprising how quickly the market came back in China. Now, there's an artificial reason, a mechanical reason, which is basically you can't travel abroad, so you're buying at home. So, okay, if you consider that in 2019, probably 60% of purchases by Chinese consumers actually took place outside of mainland China. Well,
Mm,
no one's traveling anymore, so artificially, without doing wonders, you might be growing triple digits, 100%, and still not growing with the Chinese cohort overall. So that's a mechanical impact, but I think there's clearly evidence of much more positive psychology than a lot of people would have imagined. I started getting, having conversations with friends in Shanghai in April and May, telling me, COVID-19 is yesterday's story. Again, I'm a bit biased. I'm based in New York. It's not yesterday's story. It's been like a 6-month trauma and ongoing. This is not over yet. So the psychology and the appetite for luxury is back big time. There is also a surprise in the US, to be fair. I mean, the US was in the doldrums, and still COVID-19, it varies state by state. I think New York is okay-ish, but you have cases actually ramping up in other states. So it's a bit of a diverse landscape, but surprisingly, there's been a good pickup in luxury sales here as well. Not for the
mm,
same reason. I think in the U.S. it's more linked to equity markets. Historically, there's
mm,
been a good correlation between luxury demand and equity markets in the U.S., and equity markets are at an all-time high, so that's helpful. You've had a bit of staycationing, so
mm.
American consumers not going to Europe, not spending on flights, hospitality, hotels, not going to Michelin star restaurants. Actually, you can't do that in New York; they're all closed still. And so saving up, and if you have which is not my case, but if you have a place in the Hamptons, or if you have a house in
Mm,
the suburbs, the value of that place has gone up 20% over the summer. So suddenly you're feeling pretty wealthy, you're feeling pretty good. And unlike in the period post 9/11, there is no guilt factor. There is no
mm,
idea that it's inappropriate or even vulgar to purchase luxury. So there is a pickup going on here as well in the US. I don't think it's as long lasting, because part of it is recruitment, part of it is wealthy individuals who had already bought luxury who are coming back. I think what's
mm,
a lot healthier with the Chinese rebound is that you are looking essentially at recruitment. You're essentially looking at first-time purchasers.
mm,
And that, I think, is a lot more stable, or a lot more reassuring in terms of where that growth goes to next. Now, I'm not going to pretend that COVID hasn't changed a few habits.
mm,
In the initial phase when stores reopen, you don't really spend hours trying on a dress or footwear or whatever. You're efficient. You're in and out. You're going for the so-called hero product, or the
mm.
best-selling item, that monogram handbag that you've been looking at, or wishing for ages. It will be a very efficient purchase, and
Mm,
you're buying less, buying better. So what it means is the bigger brands, again, sadly, are massively taking share relative to the smaller guys. Because
mm,
if you're buying a piece of jewelry, likelihood is it might be Cartier. If you're buying a handbag, likelihood is it might be Vuitton or Gucci or one of the big guys. And even within the brands, you're not browsing for hours. You are
mm,
going to the carryover product that the brand is known for, and you're not
mm,
going to spend. So, this again is evolving. If you're in China now, you've started to go back to stores for quite a few months already. So, you're becoming a bit more confident, becoming a bit more mellow. You're not in and out in 2 minutes. You might actually try a pair of shoes. You might try a dress. I think in the West for now, it's super efficient. It's in and out, very short period of time. Needs to be efficient. So, for me, again, if you think about the implications, it's essentially big versus small. The big are winning even more. You've had a lot of talks about, given the tough times we're going through, given theoretically the stress ahead of the election in the US, people will look for more subtlety in the products. It's not really happening.
Not happening.
No, I mean, a lot of brands are basically telling you that the so-called signature products, so basically handbags with logos, are actually increasing in terms of contribution to sales today in the US versus 6 months ago. So I don't actually buy it. I don't buy that people want to be super discreet. Again, there is no guilt factor. It was inappropriate to buy post 9/11. No one's thinking, at least, most wealthy American and Chinese consumers are not thinking it's an issue. They're happy. There's a sort of, I've heard the term a few times, a survival trade. I've survived this for 6 months. I'm allowed to reward myself. It's been tough, so it's fine to reward myself. It's not inappropriate. I'm not feeling guilty at all.
That is absolutely very interesting. Do you also feel that the new, as you said, right now a lot of recruitment is happening, right? And what are those new consumers? Are they still coming from first tier cities? Are they coming from lower tier cities? Do you think that these big logos and displaying that you finally purchased your first luxury, are ever coming back, with the fact that, higher tier consumers are probably not first time buyers and maybe they want to go for niche brands, but these mid and lower tier cities, they are right now, being recruited. Are we to see huge Gucci logos on every t-shirt and bag again or not? What's your take?
So that was the big risk. And I was Hong Kong based at the time, 7-8 years ago. You would hear comments from consumers telling you, Vuitton is a brand for secretaries. I've seen it too much. I'm fed up. Obviously in Hong Kong, it was even worse because you would take an elevator in like a business district and it was head to toe Chanel and Vuitton, and it was just off the charts, right? That issue of ubiquity, I think the brands have been incredibly smart at addressing it. So, going back to the example of Vuitton, I think the predominance of the monogram handbag 7-8 years ago, that's been diluted out. So now they have hyper segmented their offering. So they can please the uber wealthy, Hong Kongese tai, and they can please the 22-year-old. One will spend, hundreds of thousands of dollar equivalents and a full day in the store and be at the VIP salon, sipping the champagne she likes with the sales associate she's known for like 15 years. The other will be in and out in 2 minutes. Both will tell you, oh, wow, what an incredible experience at Vuitton. They will not have experienced the same thing at all. But the magic, I think, with this hyper segmentation, if you look at Vuitton, if you look at Gucci, if you look at Cartier, if you look at all of the mega brands that have done this well, is you find a way to please everyone without alienating anyone. And you move, I haven't heard Vuitton is a brand for secretaries in like 5 years. Even though the brand is significantly larger now than it was 7 years ago, right? They have just been super insightful. And in understanding that there is no reality of scarcity in luxury. You won't have a handbag manufacturer telling you we're out of cows for leather. That's just not going to happen. But what you do need is to try to convey the illusion of scarcity. To try to tell the consumer it's only about you. This product, you're the only one buying it. This experience in store, you're the only one having it. This type of communication that we're sending to you, whether it's on email or WeChat or WhatsApp or whatever, it's thought out just for you. So you have the illusion of being incredibly privileged, even though you're one in several millions potentially. But that's again, CRM systems, knowledge. Knowledge is power. Again, I think that's another reason why the bigger guys, and whether it's the groups or the brands, are going to be better off, because when you enter a store, they'll know who you are. They'll know that your son is turning 10 in 2 weeks, that his favorite color is green, et cetera, et cetera. They have insights that, you might not want to share, but if you're sharing them, they know a lot. And they will welcome you in ways that will, flatter you and will please you. And you'll think, okay, they know how to treat someone, and you'll want to go back. So I think that level of, insight and knowledge of the consumer is quite unique. And the issue of ubiquity, honestly, for the bigger brands, I think they've addressed that. It took them a while. There was a lot of pressure. When you start getting into that mood of, oh, I've seen you too much, I'm fed up, etc., that's an issue. You've hit a wall, and you have to find intricate, insightful ways of getting out of that hole, and they got out of it.
That's beautiful. Let's talk about premiumization of everything, because, buying watches and bags and luxury cosmetics is one thing, but also going for premium lifestyle all across, the country is definitely something that's happening in mainland China right now. And this is just the beginning. What is your take? What is going to be premiumized?
I think there's no limit to it. I think, so again, the idea is today, luxury is essentially about recruitment. But tomorrow, in 10 years, it's going to be about repeat purchases. And if you're in the market of my first handbag, you're not going to think about anything else. You're going to buy that first handbag. If you own 2, 3, 4 handbags, it's open, right? You'll think, okay, maybe I don't need another handbag. Maybe I'd like to do a bit of a bespoke trip to some place that I can brag about, or that I can just enjoy for myself. Maybe health is the new wealth, and I think in countries like the US, where social security is not a given, and people have been under pressure, maybe you're thinking, am I eating the right food? Am I working out correctly? Am I sleeping enough? Am I am I a healthy mind and a healthy body, essentially? And if the answer is no, you might want to invest in there. You've seen a lot of meditation apps employing people like John McEnroe and Matthew McConaughey and other Hollywood stars to help you sleep. I mean, I would have told you that 10 years ago. It's a complete joke, right? But people are ready to pay up for that. You are ready to pay up to be part of a club, Soho House. You are ready to pay up to go to a Starbucks roastery, because you're fed up of going to the regular Starbucks because you think it's like a Dunkin' Donuts or a McDonald's. You want something that's a bit more elaborate. Again, whatever field you look at, there will be a super premium version of what you're looking for that can be a substitute in terms of your share of wallet relative to your next handbag, your next watch, your next piece of jewelry. So I think it's the mission, actually, of the luxury groups. And I've argued in the book that it's part of the mission of LVMH as being the biggest group in the space to actually try to anticipate what the next big thing will be. And so, not that long ago, they bought a hotel chain called Belmont Hospitality. Not that long ago, they bought Rimowa, which is basically a super high-end luggage brand. Now, in hindsight, it's easy to say, oh, but with COVID-19, the timing of that was terrible. Who's going to go to a hotel? Who's going to buy luggage? Yeah, sure, but travel will come back. People are still keen to discover the world. People are still keen to basically have something, super interesting to tell their neighbors, their coworkers, their family members, et cetera, et cetera. So I think gradually, you will have a lot more diversification away from the traditional products. Whether it's virtual reality, whether it's entertainment. Some will joke that under COVID-19 in the US, the real luxury was binging on Netflix. You can or gaming. You were mentioning gaming. Gamification of luxury is huge. Again, because you're looking at a younger consumer. She wants to have fun. You've had Burberry, teaming up with Twitch to present the collection, and it's not by chance. It's because you are addressing a young population. People have talked about retailtainment, which is probably the most horrible word I can think of, but it's a reality. I don't need luxury. I go to luxury brands because they're able to put a smile on my face, and they're able to transform my day, and they're able to help me have a conversation with a friend to say, oh, I bought this bag or or Moncler down jacket or ring, and it made my day and it made my month, or it just transformed the way I'm feeling about myself and the way I relate to others. So again, no one needs luxury. It's just no one needs luxury, but it's very central in many people's lives.
Absolutely. And I love this chapter in the book about premiumization, because I totally see it here on the ground. And it comes from, as you said, people choosing, just a better kind of coffee, right? You went to normal Starbucks and now you go to roastery. But at the same time, it just goes across all level. For instance, in lower tier cities, people used to buy this kind of brand-less toilet paper. And right now they want to purchase soft triple layer toilet paper. And this is a big thing, right? And for us, this is not luxury. Well, for them it is. To purchase branded toilet paper for this consumer is in fact, a move in the right direction. Then talking about young people, talking about young people, there's a huge move into expensive stationery, right? And all of them, they don't want to get just a pen or just a notebook. They all want to have leather kind of, with their name embroidered there. And even moleskin is not good enough. They go for something extremely unique and expensive, and something that, again, they can use for a while. Also, right now, post-COVID-19, we see so many young people decorating their house with this little small appliances for kitchen, where you can bake like literally one toast, and you can have this little light that shines stars and plays music. And some of these things, this might not come across as luxury at first, but some of these things cost high hundreds of RMB. That for young people is extremely expensive, and they're willing to spend 900, 1,000 RMB for a little light that you put next to their bed. Again, why? Because it makes them feel good, because they feel that, oh my God, I'm decorating my own space, and in fact, this is kind of luxury hotel upgrade, which is amazing, and we see that being kind of developed right now. Exactly. One final question before we move into the closing. What do you think about China-based luxury brands that are definitely on the rise? They're entering this arena. A lot of people feel that we're going to see more and more of them, and Western brands are up against very powerful competition very soon. What is your take? China-born luxury.
Yeah, so I think it already exists to a certain extent in ready-to-wear, so fashion brands, and to a certain extent in jewelry. I believe that as long as we are in this recruitment phase, many Chinese consumers will relate to the Parisian, the Londoner, the New Yorker, the Tokyoite, and think of herself as a cosmopolitan consumer before being a Chinese consumer. And so because of that, she will be going to the brands that those different city dwellers relate to. But you're right. I think in phase two, when I'm moving from just buying for the first time to having bought a few of these items, and because there is a willingness from the younger generation to look inward, I think to look at your history, 5,000 years of phenomenal history in China. It's so rich. To look at domestic travel. I mean, I remember when I was Hong Kong based, we went to Yunnan. We were on our own. I'm talking to friends right now who are telling me I'm going to Yunnan. It's a struggle to actually get there because it's getting packed and it's difficult. But there's so much to discover in China. There's so much more inward looking to be done. I think it's coming, but again, give it some time. You have to be patient, because in the initial phase of fitting in the initial phase of proving myself, I will go to the brands that are established not just in China, but established on a global cosmopolitan basis. But yeah, I'm not ruling it out at all. You need for the consumer to evolve into that phase of repeat purchases rather than just recruitment.
Very interesting, and we are definitely up for it. Luxury in Asia is only going to grow, and this is definitely the market that is driving probably global consumption. Where can we get the book? What else can we learn in this book? Just your quick power introduction into this beauty. I am a big supporter. I think this book was long overdue, as I said in my review of it, and I'm glad that it's here. Tell us, where can we get this awesomeness?
Thank you, Ashley. I think basically you can buy it on Amazon very easily, and you can have the Kindle version as well if you prefer having that. And then, if you're allergic to Amazon, which some people are, and they would rather go to their local bookstore, you can order it there as well. They either have it or they can order it for you. So it's relatively easy. What you can learn, there are 270 pages. I have more than 10 interviews with CEOs and experts in the field to try to illustrate, what I'm trying to, the point I'm trying to make. We mentioned a few things, but I think there's a lot more in there. And because it's over the next 10 years, I also write 21 projections that should happen between now and 2030, which is always tricky because, as you know, the world changes every day. But I think it's important in a time of stress, in a time of crisis, where people are thinking about their day-to-day, to take a bit of distance, from the daily issues, the daily concerns, and to have that helicopter view, and to, I hope I will convince you, if you do read the book, people who are listening, that indeed there's a lot of growth ahead, that there is light at the end of the tunnel. It's not another train. It's really something quite positive out there.
That's beautiful, Erwan. Thank you so much for this conversation today. Guys, definitely check out this book. If you're China watchers, if you're working in luxury, if you are in travel retail, this is something that you need to know, understand. And remember, it's not only about watches and bags and luxury cosmetics. It's a lot more products that are going this premiumization route right now in mainland China. That's it. Stay tuned for more China experts to come soon, and enjoy your day.